country's constitution. If you have done it, then you face, at the end of it all, you face the ECOWAS and put your case. Maybe you have a case. We'll look into that. But we don't want ECOWAS to be seen in the setting up of the tribunal. And let us be reminded that we have yet problems that is on our head. ECOWAS is being given bad name, bashing, and everything. So do you want us again to carry this type of load again? No way. Please, let us be careful. In as much as we feel for you, we are women. They said, they said women were raped. People were killed. You have all rights. We set up our own, how we call it, special court during the war. We looked into some of the cases. But that is where we looked and removed the death penalty in our constitution. You have all right to amend your constitution, but you don't have to carry ECOWAS along so that they can be dictators. Tomorrow, who will face the bulk of it? Like what you heard from my colleagues there. Who will face the bulk of it? Is the ECOWAS. And Sierra Leone is part of the ECOWAS. So tomorrow, you are our sisters and brothers, and you are our in-law. We marry your sister. Tomorrow, they will face to us that you signed, you made this. And let us bear in mind, there are still Yaya Jammeh's people in the army. There are still Yaya Jammeh's people in the community. So let us take things as we call it. Please, I, as the chairperson for gender and women's empowerment, in as much as we are fighting for the rights of women and gender, please, let us do things as we believe it can happen. And I want to ask a question. How far have you gone with the sensitization? How far? We want to know the sensitization. We want to know the roar of the people in Gambia. We want to know the voice of the voiceless in Gambia. Then we'll be there to hear, we'll be there to say. It's just like when somebody is beaten. I want to support what the recommendations that the committee have given, and I want to say thank you for the recommendation and being so wise. Because if Gambia sneezes, Sierra Leone will catch the cold, and Guinea will catch the cold, and the rest. So we are all in it together. Let us all work together. Let us learn to forgive. Let us put everything behind our backs. Thank you very much.
Create a tribunal, the resources are necessary. So they said they didn't need any resources. So Gambia could appeal to a second or a third country, could be a friendly country. So how are we going to create a tribunal as ECOWAS and then not invest in it with our resources? That's not defensible. So, dear colleagues and friends of the press, and then the ECOWAS citizens who are following our debates directly, the Parliament here united, you go to any of the countries, the delegations are there. There is not a single, let's say, delegation. Even the Gambia, well, there's one, some of the members who belong to Jammeh's party, and they are working together with the other colleagues. Senegal, the delegations are the same. Nigeria is the same. Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Sierra Leone. We are delegations that are composed of different political parties. So the view we are expressing here is solid. In other words, coming from the populations and MPs who want the ECOWAS Parliament, and the ECOWAS in particular should become, let's say, people of the ECOWAS, and that ECOWAS should bring the populations together. So let's argument so that in the resolution, the Council of Ministers should be elected, so that they should wake up. Well, the second discussion we had, well, we have text to follow, the Supplementary Act, we have the internal procedures, and then the period within which should receive the, let's say, the request. They didn't follow the rules. And also, if you come up with an idea, you have to apply it. But we wanted to show our goodwill, and that's why we devoted some time to it. It was not easy. We met once, second time, and then we had to rise, and then we had to go back. And then we came to the conclusion we have presented. So, Honorable Speaker, I can say as member of this joint committee, I would like to conclude by saying that it was not a single committee, but they were a mixed committee. Colleagues have worked with all seriousness, and we are calling on all of us not only to adopt the conclusions, but to defend them in the press, and also to, let's say, disseminate them, because it's the Parliament that is speaking. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague.
How do we resolve this to give this feeling of justice to those who are affected? Because we always believe in law that justice must be seen to be done. Will allowing it within the parameters of the law of Gambia satisfy that? Would that be sufficient? Especially in consideration of the fact, as alleged by the Deputy Speaker, who spoke very well and pointed us to the fact that there was no existing law at the time of the commission of the crime. Domestic laws. And in law, for some of you who are lawyers like me, we say, law does not work in retrospection. The law does not work in retrospect. You cannot build new laws to attend to criminality that took place before the law was contemplated. Therefore, the question becomes, does the action have an international element that makes it open to be attended to by other legislative or judicial frameworks? If the answer is yes, what are those frameworks? Where are they? Has that framework been used in other precedents to attend to similar occasions, occurrences? If the answer is yes, the rule of stare decisis, which is the rule of precedent, must be seen to apply in this unique situation. To do otherwise will be against the principles of justice. But if going forward, Gambia stands to say, we now have a law that covers these areas that is being looked at, such new laws will apply to such new facts. Because at all times, facts must follow the law must follow the facts. And in this case, there is no domesticated local laws. So we must look for any other law to which we subscribe to and apply the facts to that law. I say this because for this healing to be total, it must be seen to have been done without bias. The question becomes, is this justice necessary? The answer is yes. Because the healing it will bring will help Africa to remain peaceful. If you fail and you ignore it and handle it in a haphazard form, the pain will give birth to various other occurrences that might bring us back to the place of resolving conflict and violence. I'll give you an example. I had when so many people spoke here and they gave instances of the war that they passed through in their own countries. Nigeria is not an exception. I come from the southeastern region of this country. Talk about 50-something people died in your war. Mine was 3 million people. At the end of the war, there was an agreement that full reconciliation, full rehabilitation, full reintegration, and full reconstruction of the infrastructure that was destroyed will be carried out. And I tell you, up to date, no government has been bold enough to set up the Truth and Reconciliation Committee or any framework to heal the pains of that people where I come from. So you give a piece of the sepulchre, whitewashed sepulchre, where outside looks peaceful, but inside lies pain of the dead bones and the marrows and the maggots. This is why we must address this, and holistically so. Today, it has given birth to IPOB. It has given birth to MASSOP. It has given birth to agitation. We want to separate. Because the healing that needs to take place has not been seen to have taken place. So we must be very careful in handling this. Let us boldly support Gambia, but with a legal framework that has been used to set precedent. Precedent is part of sources of law in any legal system. This should not be differentiated in this particular instance. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I hope that we will not use illegality to solve former criminality. I say so. If you use a wrong framework to try to cure that illegality, it will not stand. Lord Denning said, you cannot place something on nothing and expect it to exist. What we can place on at the moment is the legal framework existing before the occurrence. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
One is to ensure, I read, on the Gambia, the authorities of heads of state urge the authority of the government of the Gambia and the stakeholders to expedite and adopt a new constitution ahead of the 2026 presidential election, as well as the implementation of the white paper on the recommendation of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. It is based on this premise that they have summoned the entire 13 countries' attorney generals and ministers of justice to brainstorm and look at this matter before them. When Gambia was approached, there was a lacuna, there was a gap, in which the Gambia government expressed concern that in addressing these crimes from 1994 to 2017, the Gambian laws cannot prosecute crimes of torture and enforce discipline as at that time. From 1994 to 2017, there was no legislation or there is no law that can prosecute inhumane treatment like torture and enforced disappearance. It is based on this pretext that ECOWAS want to come in to make sure that those 44 Ghanaians will find justice at the end of the day. Those 9 Nigerians that were brutally killed will find justice. Those Ivorians and those 2 from Togo will find justice. Because as at the time in which those heinous crimes were committed, you cannot prosecute them under Gambian law. And that is the reason why ECOWAS has transformed from being a dispute resolution on trade matters and interstate relations to have that human rights court to prosecute a violation of human rights. and for the fact that there was a lacuna in the legislation of the Gambia that cannot prosecute those perpetrators because lack of law, and that is why the heads of authority and government, and of course, the 30 member state ministers come together to draft this text. At the level of heads of authority, they have given their blessing. And the heads of council of ministers, both yesterday at MSC and Devo yesterday, has given their support. And it's based on those recommendations is brought before this August Assembly for us to give our blessings. I want us to know that reconciliation and reparation, it is important that this parliament stand alongside with the victims. Some people, monetary compensation will be okay for them, will do them. There's nothing bad after 20 years of injustice when there's a tribunal that put in place that have now said that for those citizens that have been killed, this is their compensation through a tribunal. Because the Commission of Inquiry or Truth and Reconciliation Commission can only recommend. They're not arbitrary organ. So basically, the Commission of Inquiry or Truth and Reconciliation Commission cannot actually give you the compensation you deserve. It has to go through a legislature. We understand that Gambia, as peaceful as it is, right after the tribunal has been set, there will be a form of healing. And this parliament can also stand with the victim that haven't done or haven't stood by you in your pursuit of justice. This August Parliament was with you. In your pursuit of justice, we stood by you to make sure that there has to be a tribunal. And after the tribunal, we are also urging you to forgive. There are steps in doing things as far as governance is concerned. But of course, I'm not trying to impose my thinking and thought, but it's important before taking a decision, some of these things need to be clarified. Bearing in mind the gaps in laws and bearing in mind the atrocities committed, how do we address that? That is why I said this point needs to be clarified. It's not that Gambia does not have the competent lawyers or legal minds to prosecute, but we have to rely on international law, bearing in mind that during the time these crimes were committed, Gambia haven't have enough law to prosecute such. And that's because of collaboration. And more importantly, it shows as a community that nobody can go unpunished after creating heinous crime. It's a deterrence, a deter for the occurrence. That after my regime, if I should malhandle people, ECOWAS can set up a commission to make sure, tribunal with the country to make sure that they prosecute. So because of lack of legislation and laws to prosecute crimes of torture, enforced disappearance, and co, they could only seek redress through the international and regional laws to apply on them so that those victims can have justice. Other than that, every other crime could be tried in the Gambia and prosecuted. Like I said, we've heard your concern, they are legit concern, they are valid concern, and you are entitled to your opinion as well. But before you take the decision, it's important to give some clarity to those issues. To end, the issue of 15 days has been raised in the report. I can assure you, text, maybe the SDU confirm. I think they have complied, making sure that this text is sent 15 days before a session. That is why it has factored in the agenda. But having said that, I want us to bear it in mind. It's not really a witch hunt. It's a mechanism in terms of giving people what they deserve after heinous crime has been meted on them. And from there, we can reconcile as a country. There is no joy in seeing a former president going to jail. There is no joy. Africans have to depart from that. I'm a true believer of that. But once the aggrieved, the victims, see that we stood by them, resolute in their pursuit of justice, we can also go back to them and beg them that to forgive and forgive. I thank you so much for your indulgence.
Merci, cher.
Thank you, dear colleague, for your long advocacy. Now I give the floor.
Yeah, that is a white paper for reconciliation. And then there was a lack of appropriate legislation and the tribunal. So the heads of state have requested Gambia to ensure that those are created. They not necessarily within Gambia, but they have to assume their responsibilities and judge the people those are involved. But the same heads of state and representatives of countries in 2016, as I was saying, represented Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, negotiated the former President Yahya Jammeh to leave based on certain conditions that are very clear and which are on paper. So we don't have to reverse what the heads of state have said. No, there's tribunal. They asked for the action to be taken so that those who are involved be judged, but within the country. So we have to be clear. We shouldn't, create confusion by getting the heads of state involved in our arguments. So we have to support the motion. Let's move forward, and then the plenary should decide as appropriate that we don't be going forward and backward. Yes, we support the motion. The point of order is supported.
Please.
2017, période qui coïncide exactement avec
exactly with the rule of the former President Yahya Jammeh, and the commissioners were wondering for the same crimes committed maybe after that period or before that period. Will this not create another injustice because you want to administer justice? And the second justice is that the financing. It was said in the document that the Gambian government was going to put up with the expenses, but the ECOWAS was not going to put any resources in there. But then the committee members were wondering that if the problem doesn't arise today, the fact that the ECOWAS is involved since the creation and then the operation of the tribunal, the problem can arise later, and it could happen that ECOWAS will be asked to contribute. So that was one of the concerns raised by the committee members. The third concern was the impact that was going to be generated not only in the Gambia but also in the sub-region as a whole, because many came to the agreement that ECOWAS had with the former regime to bring peace today. So they were wondering whether the setting up of this tribunal was going to create another or further problems. So in the sub-region, it's the same ECOWAS that will have to intervene. Because if you read out the document, there was a reference to the fact that those who enjoyed amnesty for certain crimes, and then the crime now is set up, they can be brought to a trial a second time. And that could lead to other consequences. And can ECOWAS intervene? Yeah, so these are some of the various concerns raised by committee members. So I've just summarized the concerns that were expressed in 4 points, and then the co-chair could have any other points if I missed them. Thank you, Speaker. Yes, Co-Chair, you have the floor.